Jael Tiara Hamblen was a 20-year-old from Anchorage, Alaska. She had a son and worked for the United States Census Bureau. In the very early morning hours of October 12, 2014, while at home, Jael texted with a male friend. Then 2 hours later, Jael traded calls with a man who wanted to meet her. She was never seen again. I'm Ed Densel, and this is Unfound. A picture is worth 1,000 words. I'm sure you've heard that phrase many times. Where does it come from? According to Wikipedia, in March 1911, the Syracuse Advertising Men's Club held a banquet to discuss journalism and publicity. In an article in the Post-Standard covering this event, the author quoted Arthur Brisbane as saying, "Use a picture, it's worth 1,000 words." But the exact phrase we now know in 2019 wasn't published until 1918 in a San Antonio newspaper. But what about colors? Can't they do the same thing? Well, maybe not 1,000 words, but at least a few. What do I mean? The color red. We stop at intersections just by seeing it on a traffic light. Green. The opposite. We go. Orange. I'm betting you automatically think of the season we are in right now. Halloween. Purple. Who can't think of the deceased musician Prince? Or maybe Barney. So even though there are no words or pictures, a simple color can put ideas in your mind. In fact, we're all like Pavlov's dogs. It's like we've been conditioned to behave that way. And in fact, we kind of have. Through marketing, education, and indoctrination. Well, with Jael Hamblen, she liked a certain color. In fact, she liked it so much, she dyed her hair that hue. A color when you see it, you automatically think of cuteness, femininity, and good health. But now that Jael has disappeared, we're left to wonder what happened to this girl who was pretty in pink. And now a summary of the case. This is brought to you by my friend Megan Good's website, charleyproject.org. Jael Hamblen was adopted and raised in Anchorage, Alaska. She was your typical teenager and did well in school. Then her parents got divorced, throwing her life into turmoil. Jael ran away several times, only to then return. Yet things didn't improve. Jael met a woman, Kendra, who brought Jael into the sex trade, using Craigslist, Plenty of Fish, and other sites to get her clients. Jael became so well known that the local military base put out a memo for all soldiers to stay away from Jael. On top of this, Jael had a son in early 2014. The father is still unknown. So in the early morning hours of October 12, 2014, Jael was at the home of Kendra, Kendra's ex-husband Jeff, and Kendra's future husband Nico, and all of their children. This is where Jael lived. Jael texted a male friend and he got back to her. She said she was feeling sad and crying, but that conversation stopped abruptly. Then at 3 a.m., a man called Jael. She called him, and then he called her back. It seemed he wanted to meet Jael for sex, because he had done so before. However, there is no proof they ever did meet that early morning. There is no phone activity for Jael after this. She was never seen again. Jael's purse and damaged phone were found 6 months later, 18 miles away near a popular hiking trail. They offered no additional clues regarding Jael's disappearance. As you all know by now, with disappearances involving young women involved in prostitution, there are usually many suspects and lots of rumors. And Jael's, this is no different. But I think this case can be narrowed down to these questions. Number 1. Is it a coincidence that the people who found Jael's purse were connected to someone Jael used to work with? Number 2. Did Kendra's desire to have at least partial custody of Jael's son factor into this case in any way? And number 3. Is it suspicious, or is there a reasonable explanation that the last man Jael talked to denied knowing her? The people who genuinely cared about and loved Jael believe foul play is the main factor in her disappearance, and they doubt all other possibilities. The guest for this episode is the mother of Jael's best friend, Lisa Lake. Unfound News. This Monday, November 4th, 2019, I will be releasing my interview with Steve Pankey, person of interest in the disappearance and murder of Janelle Matthews. It will be a bare-bones episode with just some commentary before and after the interview. The discussion is 3.5 hours long, so I'd get comfortable. Next, I'm happy to say that last week's Squeaky Wheel Tour episode set new records for downloads. I'm hoping this translated into you, the listeners, checking out some of the music venues and learning more about how Janelle and others help families. And of course, I'm hoping it leads to new leads in Regina Marie Boss's disappearance. And finally, I'm going to be playing in some disc golf tournaments over the next 4 weekends. So if I'm not as easy to contact during those times, you'll know why. However, the think tank will still be happening on Sunday evenings as scheduled, and all the unfound work is still getting done. I don't anticipate playing in more tournaments until January. Where you can find Unfound. Unfound supports accounts on Podomatic, iTunes, Stitcher, Instagram, Twitter, Spotify, and Facebook. On Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, please join us on YouTube for the Unfound Live Show. Contribute to Unfound at patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. This week I need to thank Bethany and Scott. You can also contribute at PayPal, unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. That is also the email address. Merchandise, the books at Amazon.com in both ebook and print form. Do not forget the reviews. Shirts at unfound-podcast.myshopify.com. Cards at makeplayingcards.com/sell/unfound podcast. And please mention Unfound at all true crime websites and forums. Thank you. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the mother of Jael Hamblen's best friend, Lisa Lake. Lisa, welcome to Unfound.
Thank you.
We have to start here because we don't have too many mothers of best friends on the program, but I think the listeners will quickly understand why you are being interviewed regarding Jael's disappearance. Let's explain to the listeners how you got involved to the point where, the listeners are going to find out you sent me tons and tons of material, a lot of text messages regarding this case and pictures and everything else. How did you get involved in Jael's disappearance, and when did it happen?
Mostly got involved because my daughter, that is Jael's friend, had just recently moved to Arizona, and she wasn't available to participate in all the events, to try to find Jael. And I kind of felt like nobody was stepping up to, get flyers out and to get the information out because family members weren't doing specific things. So I kind of got involved in that, and that was about October 14th,
Wow.
2 days after Jael went missing.
Fairly fast then. Fairly fast.
Yeah.
Okay. You felt that it wasn't like it was thrust into your lap. It was something you felt you needed to do.
Yeah, I needed to do it because nobody else was.
Right.
There wasn't anybody else really involved. So.
Okay.
And I wanted to help my daughter because she was upset.
I bet. Okay. And what we're going to do is, once we're done talking about the disappearance and everything that went on, at the end, I do want to talk to you a bit about what you've learned about disappearances, because I'm going to guess that you never thought you would get into this type of situation in your life, right? You never thought so.
Yeah, never.
Never. So I want to go maybe through some things that you've learned at the end of this conversation. We'll kind of go full circle. So you got involved in this fairly fast. Once again, your daughter, her name is Lane, was good friends, if not best friends, with Jael. But you knew Jael yourself. And we're going to get into how she actually stayed with you for a little while at one point. How does your daughter know Jael?
She met her in middle school here in Alaska once we moved here. So she met Jael in school.
Mm-hmm. And so middle school, when you say, mean like 6th, 7th grade, something like that?
8th grade.
8th grade, okay. And so back then, 8th grade, would that mean that you have like sleepovers? Back then, like we know more recently, we're going to talk about more recently to her disappearance, but back then, would she come over like for sleepovers and maybe go to the movies, take her to the movies, things like that?
Yeah, they were, two peas in a pod and would go everywhere together. They would stay, at my house. They would stay at Jael's house. Yeah, they were pretty much,
okay.
They were best friends at that point.
So very close, very close.
Yeah, very close.
Okay, and how would you explain Jael's personality as an 8th grader, 9th grader? Outgoing, introverted, how would you explain her?
Very, what I would call bubbly. I never saw her, unhappy. I always saw her, she was always in a good mood. She was always very respectable in my house. She talked well, with adults. And she was a good fit for my daughter. So she was welcome at my house whenever.
Okay. Never had any problems with her at all?
No, never.
And did you know her mother very well? Did you two maybe go to some of your daughter's events together or anything? How well did you know Jael's mother?
I actually never met Jael's mother until she went missing.
Wow. Huh. Did you ever think that was unusual? I mean, who was Jael was being cared for by her mother at the time when your daughter met her? Would that be correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you ever think that was weird that you never met her mother through all those years?
I never really thought about it. I would drop Lane off at Jael's house. I knew where she lived. But I never really thought about why I didn't have contact with Jael's mom.
Okay.
We just,
Okay.
never needed to, I guess.
All right, but I'm guessing maybe that your daughter had some interaction with her, maybe over at her house, had known Jael's mother.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And like I said, more recently, you had her at your house. Just very quickly, when she came and stayed at your house, how long was that before she disappeared? When she had come to your house, I think for maybe a couple weeks, how long was that before she disappeared?
That was many months. She was about 10 or 12 weeks pregnant with her son when she came to visit with me. He was born in March of 2014 he was born, so it would have been, maybe October, November of 2013 when she actually stayed.
Okay, so long before she disappeared, and once again, we'll come back to that. Okay. All right, so you got to know her in 8th grade. She would come over once in a while. Did she graduate high school with your daughter, or what?
No, she actually ended up going to a different high school than my daughter, and then dropped out of that school and got put into a secondary high school.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know if she got kicked out or dropped out of that school, and that's when she ran away and ended up I think she eventually got her GED, but it was years after she should have graduated from high school.
Did your daughter know that this was all going on because they went to different schools? Did your daughter know that, she dropped out and that she ran away? Is that how you found out about all this? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I knew about it. Her parents were going through a divorce at the time in high school. Okay. And I kind of distinctly remember, Jael was a really smart girl. The high school that she got accepted into is like a technical type of school. Mm-hmm. And you have to have an interview and have specific types of grades to be accepted into that school. So when she, left that school, her mom put her into that secondary school, which I remember thinking to myself, why would you take a troubled kid and put them, what I consider, down into a snake pit of a school that kids were already having issues. But, that wasn't my kid. I didn't make that choice. So, but she wasn't at that secondary school for very long, and then ended up running away and, never went back to school until a few years after that and got her GED.
You mentioned something interesting about her going to the school, getting into the school, that it sounds like it was for higher achievers, because there is the information out there that she had some sort of learning disability or something like that. You're saying that is totally wrong. That is not the Jael you knew.
Not my impression of Jael. Did I ever think that she had a learning disability? Mostly because she did get accepted into that higher tech school. That school is not, they don't just accept anybody. Yeah. So she had to have gotten in there with grades. So I never saw that with Jael. I never saw any learning disabilities. I never saw any, emotional things or anything like that. She was just a good kid, and,
Where do you think that got started? Where do you think that got started then? And has your daughter ever offered up any opinion on where that got started? Because even on like the Charley Project.org site, which is a very well-respected site, it does kind of talk about that. Do you have any idea how that even got started?
I know her mom has made statements, her adopted mother has made statements that Jael was a fetal alcohol syndrome baby. I don't know, because I didn't know her when she was originally adopted. I've heard 2 or 3 different stories about Jael's biological mom, how the adoption happened. That specific information came from Jael's adoptive mom saying that she had that fetal alcohol syndrome. So I don't know. I wasn't there when she got diagnosed.
All right, but your interaction, though, starting in 8th grade, of course, your daughter's interaction with her as well, you never could have guessed that would have ever been said about Jael.
Never.
Okay. All right.
Not my impression of her.
Okay.
No.
All right. Thank you. All right. So she ran away sometimes. Do you think this was because of her parents with these troubles, or do you think there was something else going on?
I think it all started when her parents were in the process of getting divorced, is when Jael started acting out.
Okay.
She was about probably 16.
That really had to be hard for you, knowing her like you did. It sounds like you liked her a lot. Obviously, she and your daughter were friends. You allowed your daughter to be friends with Jael, and then to hear these things probably must have been quite a downer when you started hearing about these things.
Yeah, it just was out of character. I didn't think that Jael was, on that path, and I think she was just looking for some kind of acceptance, from anybody, because her world was kind of just falling apart at that point when her parents got divorced.
Okay. Did she have any brothers and sisters, Jael?
She had a brother. He was also adopted. He was younger.
Okay.
His name is Owen.
Okay. Did you know him very well? Did your daughter know him very well?
No. My daughter knew him, but I had never met him until Jael went missing, and he was babysitting her son.
Okay.
The only time I ever met him.
Okay. So she's doing well, but gets into high school. Family's kind of falling apart. Divorce. She's running away, having issues like a lot of, I think, kids do when parents are going through a divorce. Now, you did say that she ended up getting pregnant at one time. When did she get pregnant? And what year, roughly what year, if you can say? And, did you have a chance to talk to her about that? And we'll go from there.
Well, when she got pregnant with her son, that was approximately fall of like 2013, I think. If I can count back.
Okay.
But, she had gotten pregnant intentionally, as far as I understood, that her and Kendra Estrada, or Kendra Vincent at the time, had planned on having a baby, and she intentionally went out and got pregnant.
Okay, and we're going to talk about Kendra in a moment. Who told you that?
Mostly my daughter. I don't think I ever heard it directly come from Jael. Mostly my daughter and probably Kendra.
Okay. And do you believe that your daughter, in telling you this, got that from Jael herself?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So they went to different schools and everything, but somehow they were, your daughter and Jael were still keeping in contact with each other. And we have to keep in mind that Jael was only 20 years old when she went missing. So this would have been when she was approximately 19, something like that. And so this is what Jael told your daughter. Do we know if she went out, and if that is true, that she intentionally got pregnant, do we know to this day who the father is of her child?
No. I've heard from multiple different people, different names, different scenarios, but there has been no documentation of who the father is.
Okay. And it's a son, right? Son?
Yeah.
Okay.
His name is Joel.
Okay. And on his birth certificate, is there any man's name on there?
No, there's no father listed on his birth certificate. He does have a hyphenated last name with Hamblen and Vincent, which was Kendra's last name.
Okay. And once again, listeners are probably going to need to find out a little bit more about her here in a moment. But something else, and maybe some people are already thinking this anyway when we start talking about a woman going out, or a young woman, girl, going out and intentionally getting pregnant, but was Jael involved in sex work?
As far as we know now, yes.
Yeah. So we can just go by what we know now, right? But back at the time, maybe, and I'll ask you that, back in, let's say, 2012, 2013, did you know that? Do you think your daughter knew that?
I think my daughter knew it. I didn't know it at the time.
Okay. How long do you have any, now that you can look back at it now, and now that you know now, all these years later, and can you pick a particular year when she started doing this?
Probably approximately like 2011.
Okay, so about 3 years before she disappeared. Is this something that you think she did by choice, or do you think that this is something, and we'll talk about her in a moment, that this is something that this Kendra woman got her into?
A little bit of both. I think that Jael was trying to find anybody that would, give her attention, and it ended up somehow into being paid for sex acts. I also think that Kendra pushed her into that. I've heard from other people that she would set Jael up with other people, lots of military guys,
right,
stuff like that.
Okay.
There's no evidence, but just, talk.
Okay, well, we'll get into that a little bit more when we talk about Kendra, and we're going to talk about her in a second once again. But do you now know, do you know how Jael publicized herself? Maybe a lot of people maybe think these days with Craigslist, maybe using some dating sites like plentyoffish.com, other sites. Is that how she was doing that?
Yeah, lots of Plenty of Fish activity, lots of other dating apps. I know she had placed an ad on Craigslist right before she went missing. Yeah, there was multiple dating apps and stuff that she had belonged to.
Okay. And you mentioned the Army base. Maybe we should just say what base is this in Alaska where she was getting clients?
It's Elmendorf Air Force Base and Fort Richardson Army Base. They're a joint base.
Okay.
Called Jaber.
Okay. And do you think that she ended up meeting these guys once again through the internet? Do you think that's once again? I realize I know you're just maybe guessing, but your best guess on this.
Well, my best guess is she found him on the internet, but she also, I think, was introduced to military people through other military people. Okay.
And you had told me a story just so everybody can know. And once again, you should know, Lisa, that this is not an uncommon topic for us. We've talked a lot about women who are in the sex trade. We talk about a lot of men and women who are into drugs. We just talk about these things very honestly. The only reason we talk about them is because they could be an element of the disappearance. We're not making any judgments or anything. That's not what we do. But I think this is important for the listeners to understand the extent to which Jael was doing this. But you had told me a story that at some point she was so well known on the base that they actually had to have like a meeting, or they sent on a memo. And what did this say?
It was like a commander's call type of a thing where they were warning the soldiers on the base to stay away from her because she had a sexually transmitted disease and had put her name out there, and that they had, she had been in the dorms multiple times and had been in base housing with people who lived with men who lived in base housing, and her name had been on, you have to get a pass to get on base. So they had like a briefing based on her. Wow. Because of that.
Wow. Do you do you know when this happened, when this announcement was made? Year, maybe month, the best you can do?
I don't really recall exactly when it happened, but probably within a year of her disappearance, maybe 6 months.
All right, so maybe about 6 months prior to her disappearing. Okay. All right, and just to remind the listeners, she disappeared on October 11th, 2014, so sometime you're thinking during the year of 2014.
Yeah.
Okay. We mentioned her a few times. Her name is Kendra Vincent, and then once she got married, it was Kendra Estrada. We're going to take an opportunity to talk about her quite a bit. Did you ever meet Kendra before Jael disappeared?
No.
No. Had you ever heard of her?
Yes.
Okay. What, being that you never met her, but I'm guessing you were told about her maybe from your daughter and others, what did you learn about her in general? Is she a native of Alaska, or did she move there kind of like you did? What have you learned about her?
From what I understood, she was raised here. She was born and raised here. And when I first heard about her, that it was when Jael had ran away, that she had met this woman on a dating app and had moved in with her in Anchorage with her and her husband, and was living there, according to my daughter's recollection of what was happening, that Jael was in a relationship with both of these people. She lived with them for a couple months, moved back home into her mother's house, didn't like the rules at her mother's house, moved back to Kendra and her husband's house, just kind of back and forth was that was the first encounter that I had heard of her.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, and we'd already stated that Jael got into sex work on Craigslist and other places, but your belief, your understanding is that Kendra was helping Jael with this as well?
My personal opinion?
No, what you've been told. I know you never met her, so you only know what other people have told you. What is your impression, once again, at the time, and maybe what you've learned since 2014?
Yeah, in the beginning, I didn't think that was happening, but within the past year and a half before she went missing, I am pretty convinced that Kendra had a part in her being, paid.
Okay. And you said, though, that she was also having a relationship with, a personal, intimate relationship with Kendra and Kendra's husband, and what is his name? What was his name?
Jeff Vincent.
Jeff Vincent. Okay. This is Kendra, and we're going to talk about her other husband a little bit later. All right, so somehow Kendra and Jael run into each other online. Jael is prostituting herself. That's what she's doing. She's living with Kendra, and then sometimes she'd move back with her mother, back and forth, back and forth. And does Kendra, to your knowledge, have like an official job? Did Jeff have an official job? Once again, to your knowledge.
Not that I'm aware of like an official job. I know Kendra worked for a tax. She did taxes a couple months out of the year, and then I have no clue what Jeff did.
Okay.
I didn't know him.
Okay. So they're all living together, the three of them. Does Kendra have any children with Jeff?
Yeah, 2.
All right. So it's Jael. This would have been before Jael had her son. It was Jael, Kendra, Jeff, and the children. But at some point, from what you've told me, what you've learned, is that Kendra actually got divorced from Jeff.
Correct.
Okay. Any idea? And once again, I know you didn't know her, but you've learned a lot about her. Since then, can you pick maybe a year that they got divorced?
As far as I recall, it was right before Jael went missing in like 2014, like August of 2014, because then Kendra got married to Nico in October of 2014.
Okay,
right
so
after Jael.
All right, so let's talk about that. So Jeff and Kendra are living together. They're married. They're having this relationship with Jael, and of course she's well known in the area for unfortunately being a prostitute. And then they get divorced in August, Jeff and Kendra do, but does Jeff go anywhere?
No, he still lived in the house.
Okay.
He lived in the garage.
Okay, and you already mentioned this other guy, Nico. Who is he?
He was a young Army guy that originally had been set up with Jael by Kendra, and Jael and Nico did not get along, and then somehow Kendra ended up dating him, and then they got married.
Okay, so 2 months, what you're saying is 2 months after Jeff and Kendra get divorced, she gets married to Nico right around the time that Jael disappears. Do you take this to mean maybe Nico and Kendra had something going on before Kendra and Jeff got divorced, or?
I wouldn't know about that.
No idea. No idea. Okay. So, am I then to understand at some point it was Jeff, Kendra, Nico, Jael, and Kendra's kids all living under the same roof? Let's say September into October of 2014.
Correct.
Okay. Now, within all of this, and Nico was in the military, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's in the Army.
Okay. At the base, was he at the base that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, at Fort Ridge.
Okay. Now, at some point, Jael did have her son. When was he born, and who was taking care of him? And I mean, was he under this roof too, or what was going on there?
He is under that roof. He was born March 10th of 2014, and he was living in that same house.
Okay, so Jael, and you had already stated that when he was born, there was no father put on the birth certificate, but the name Hamblen Vincent or Vincent Hamblen was put on the birth certificate.
Correct.
And can you maybe try to explain that, how that all happened? What does that mean to you?
As far as I knew, that Kendra and Jael were going to raise Joel as a couple, that Jael was the mom role and Kendra was the father role. At some point during the day that Joel was born in the hospital, there was a big blow up that Kendra wanted Jael to put her husband at the time, Jeff Vincent, on his birth certificate in case something ever happened to Jael, that Kendra would still have legal rights over Joel. And Jael's mom stepped in and said no, that wasn't going to happen. And the papers got hyphenated. The last name got hyphenated instead of putting his name on that birth certificate.
Okay. But Jeff Vincent's name is not on the birth certificate. Even though the last name is there, his last name is not on it. Do you even know what Kendra's maiden name is before Vincent?
No, I know her mom's last name is Paraway, but I have no clue if that's Kendra's.
Okay. I'm sure listeners are saying this is all fairly confusing. A lot of people under the same roof. We're not here to make judgments on relationships. We realize that polygamy goes on. In many places it's illegal, but adults are going to be adults. And, but you have these kids involved, and then Joel's born, and it seems like Kendra is trying to take possession of him. Total possession, it seems. If Jael's mother had not taken, it's not stepped in. Is that your impression as well?
Yeah, there was some type of multiple power of attorneys that had been written that in case something happened to Jael, that Kendra would be able to take care of Joel and to keep him away from Jael's adoptive mother, I know. But those power of attorneys were never filed in court, so they weren't legitimized. So when Jael went missing, her mom went to court and took custody of him because she was the next of kin.
Okay. All right, so what you're saying is Kendra's last name being on that birth certificate, once Jael disappeared, didn't have a lot of weight later.
Correct.
Okay. Is there any chance, being that the last name was on the birth certificate, is there any chance that Jeff Vincent was the father of Jael's son?
Not that I'm aware of.
No. Okay. Just trying to figure out a reason that they might have been doing that. That would make sense if they believe that the son was his. I can see why they might have wanted to get their names put on that birth certificate, but that's not what happened. Okay. So, was Joel living, the son, the little guy, was he under the roof there with Jael and the others when she disappeared in October 2014?
He was living there, but he was not in the house. He was actually staying at Kendra's mother's house for the weekend.
Okay.
Along with Kendra's other two kids.
Okay. Now, we had mentioned that at one point, it sounds like it was like a year before she disappeared, Jael, while she was pregnant, came and stayed with you. How long was that? How long was it? A couple weeks, something like that?
Yeah, like 2 weeks.
All right.
She stayed with me.
How did that go?
It was fine. I was trying to open up avenues for her to, make a decision about. She was on the fence of either giving Joel up for adoption or not going through with the pregnancy, and I would just try to support her with whatever decision she made. She had actually made an appointment with Planned Parenthood to have an abortion, and Jael was raised in a pretty religious home, and she had made the appointment, and then her mom, I think, had gotten in contact with her, and Jael had decided to keep the baby, and then she kind of just up and left because she knew she wasn't allowed to stay at my house. I told her that she was allowed to stay until she made a decision. She was going to be moving out into another apartment with another friend, so she was welcome at my house until she, got into that apartment, but it wasn't going to be a permanent thing because I didn't want her to think that my house was an out for her.
Yeah.
I wanted her to go back home to her mom's house. I didn't want her to go back to Kendra's house, but then all of a sudden she kind of up and left and was keeping the baby and was back at Kendra's house, not her mom's house.
Okay. And like you said, this was about a year before she disappeared. Is it then your insight into once she went back to Kendra's, that time she was there until she disappeared?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, no, because she had Joel. She had Joel in March, and then she left Kendra's house, went back to her mom's house for, I don't know, tentatively maybe 2 to 3 weeks, and then again got into a big fight with her mom and was back at Kendra's house again.
Okay.
She was kind of back and forth quite a bit.
Okay. When she stayed with you for those couple weeks, how much did you two talk about Kendra? Frankly, did you talk about if you maybe you didn't know about it? I don't know what to extent you knew about it at that point. Did you talk about her work that she was doing? Did you talk about Kendra? Did she ever say she was afraid of Kendra? It seems like she had any fears in her life. What were the conversations, if you can say?
We didn't really talk about Kendra so much. She had mentioned to me and my daughter that that Kendra had, threatened her before, that if she ever did anything with the baby or took the baby away, but she was still pregnant at the time, so she had mentioned threats, but honestly, Jael, I wouldn't consider that Jael was afraid, because she kept going back. She had multiple opportunities to not go back. So whenever she did go back, I don't know if it was because she was being pressured by Kendra, but she never appeared to be afraid. She did say that there had been some threats here and there. I know one time she spent the night in the JCPenney bathroom that she worked at because she was afraid to go home, things like that, but she always went back. So I just thought, well, anything is better than being at home with her mom, because her and her mom didn't get along. So it was her choice. She was an adult at that point.
Right. Okay. All right. So you did talk about Kendra some, but it doesn't sound to me like there was any conversations when you thought you were afraid for Jael's life. She goes back. She has she has her son. She goes back and lives with her mom. She has problems there. She goes back and lives with Kendra, and it would have just been her, Kendra, Jeff, and the kids at this time. This was before Nico came into the picture. Let's move up now. She has her son. She's living at Kendra's. Was it your understanding that at some point, maybe even before 2014 ended, that Jael was trying to get her own place?
Yeah, she had applied to get her own apartment. I've seen paperwork on it. And I think she was supposed to have moved in about 10 days after she went missing. she was on some kind of a lottery system or something where, I don't know, she had a certain amount of numbers of people that were ahead of her, and they, the paperwork that I saw showed that she should have been moving in within that amount of time.
Okay. All right. And she was going to have a roommate, and we're going to keep the roommate's name out of all of this, but she wasn't going to be living by herself.
No, she was, yeah, she was going to have a roommate.
Okay, so it was going to be the two of them and her son.
Yes.
Okay. And would you say at that time, still in 2014, in October of 2014, if she was going to be getting her own place, do you believe she would have been paying for it through her sex work, or did she have a regular job, or what was her income situation?
She had a job. She was working as a either a census person, or I remember seeing a thing. She was working for Dan Sullivan, which is a senator. So I think it was maybe like election time. But she had worked at JCPenney's prior to that. She always pretty much had a job. She was going to school. So some of it I think was going to be, paid for with that job. And honestly, after she had Joel, I don't know how much of the sex work actually was going on. I think a lot of that, I don't think it completely, stopped, but I don't think it was as prevalent as it was prior to her son being born, because she started going back to school. She was trying to make something, better of herself. She was working, trying to kind of move out of that part of her life, I think.
Okay, good for her.
She was still dating. Yeah, I know she was still dating people, but didn't have a permanent boyfriend, was trying to make a life for her and her son. So I can't really say if that was happening at that point. I know it pretty much had, slowed down once her son was born, though.
Okay. Now, I'm sure during maybe the course of 2014, being that you knew that she had a son and all things, all these things going on, going back to her mother's, going back to Kendra's, the living situation over there, what kind of conversations were you having with your daughter regarding all of this? I mean, was your daughter still seeing Jael? Did your daughter ever go over to Kendra's and, go inside and, hang out or do whatever?
Gone to their house. She moved to Arizona June of 2014 and had been over to their house prior to that. She actually spent the night with Jael the night before her baby was born, and then went over, I think maybe a week or so before she was actually going to be moving to Arizona. So Lane had been in that house before, I never had, but I never heard anything, good or bad about it from Lane. She never, commented that, something was weird going on or, whatever.
It was just the way it was. She was going over there. She just got along with she got along with Kendra. She got along with Jeff. You hung out there.
I don't think she really interacted with any of those people. Just Jael and Joel. That was her.
Okay.
That was her main.
But it was Kendra and Jeff's place, right?
It was. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I just wanted to, and we've been talking quite a bit about all of this. A lot of setup here for the listeners because it's fairly complicated, and I think that they all need to understand everything that was going on at the time. And there was certainly a lot going on at the time, a lot of different relationships going on. Jael may be moving out to her own place. She's having a son in 2014. Kendra, who she's living with, maybe she has a relationship with her. She gets divorced. She's marrying another guy. So I just needed to make sure that the listeners understand all of that. Okay, so let's move up to the day that Jael disappeared. In fact, you even saw Jael that day. Why don't you tell them about your interaction with Jael, what you all did and your understanding of what went on after you saw Jael.
So I was going into Anchorage that day to do some shopping, and I had purchased some diapers for Jael's son. So I asked her to meet me at Best Buy in Anchorage, and we met in the parking lot. She was in her car. The Ford Explorer was not with Joel. Joel wasn't with her. She was by herself. So I gave her the diapers. We went into Best Buy. We were shopping for a computer. She hung out for about an hour. We chatted. She was all excited because she just dyed her hair pink for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Had talked about, so we have these oil money thing here in Alaska called PFDs. We had just gotten our PFDs, and she went and bought a new car seat for Joel. That was in the car. That was pretty much it. We hung out for about an hour, and then I didn't see, we left. She left in her car, and then that was Saturday, about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, or in the afternoon, and then about Sunday, 3, 4 o'clock, my daughter messaged me that nobody can get a hold of Jael. Had I seen her? And that's where the snowball.
That's where it started. Okay. When you saw Jael on that day, did she talk about anything she was going to be doing later that day? Was it just a regular day for you, corresponding with her, seeing her? Just a regular?
Yeah, just regular day.
Okay.
Regular day, She didn't say anything that she was doing in specific other than she was, she went shopping with her PFD money is basically all I knew, and that she was excited about her hair.
Okay. All right. Sounds just like your average 20-year-old, probably, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, since then, she might not have said what she was going to be doing the rest of the day, but since then, since you, of course, got involved shortly after her disappearance, did you learn what she did for the rest of the day? Or is that something even to this day that's a little up in the air?
Well, not that anything's up in the air. I did hear that she was upset about something, and her and Kendra had met at the TGI Fridays restaurant and ate some food, had some discussion, left there, went home. That Jael had talked about going out a little bit later, and Kendra said she was going to bed about 10 o'clock, said goodnight, and then there was a little bit of correspondence on Jael's phone from a friend that she had text messaged, and then there was another correspondence from another military guy sometime early in the morning, and then that was the last anybody ever saw or heard from Jael.
Okay. And we're going to get a little deeper into those messages, texting and calling here in a bit. But your understanding is that night that Kendra was at where she was still living with Kendra and Jeff and Nico.
Yeah.
That's your understanding.
Yeah.
Okay.
All the four of them were there.
Okay. And of course, do you think Joel was there, or no? The kids weren't there that day. That you've already explained that they weren't there. Okay. All right. So Kendra, of course, saw her, being that she was at home. Jael was back there. You had already stated that it was like the next day that your daughter got kind of the feeling that something was up. Let's go through that right now. The next few days after this. When did you find out that maybe Jael was missing?
About 4 or 5 o'clock Sunday afternoon on the 13th.
Okay. And that was from your daughter? That was from your daughter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Kendra had contacted Lane and asked if she had spoke with Jael, or had heard from her, and Lane had spoke to her about 8 o'clock the night of the 11th.
Okay.
I think it was a text message that she spoke with her about 8 o'clock that night, and that she hadn't heard from her since. And according to Kendra, she had text messaged Jael 2 or 3 times on Sunday asking her if she wanted to go to the movies, and there was no response. So that's when she contacted Lane to ask Lane to contact Jael's mom to see if Jael's mom had heard from her. I don't know if it was Sunday the 13th or Monday the 14th. Kendra apparently called the police saying that she hadn't heard from her, wanted to file like a missing persons report, and the police told her that she needed to give it another 24 hours, that because Jael was an adult, that, you know, she could just be off somewhere, blah, 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 and for her to contact all of her friends and relatives.
Okay.
So, Lane contacted Colleen, I think maybe Monday the 14th, and then Colleen called and filed the official missing persons report on the 14th.
Okay.
But Kendra had called them prior to that, but
Okay.
I don't know.
Let's just go through these dates maybe a little bit. The official disappearance date is October 11th, 2014. What day of the week was that?
That was a Saturday.
Oh.
And actually, you know, it says it's official on the 11th, but there were text messages on her phone
Right.
on the 12th at early in the morning, like
On Sunday. So it would have been Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay. And what you're saying is that her mother, and this is her adoptive mother?
Yeah.
Her adoptive mother actually filed an official police report not until Tuesday. That would be the 14th. Tuesday.
12, 13, yeah. Well, no, I think it was Monday.
All right, so the third. All right, so October 13th is when they went down, and she went down and filed a police report. That would be with the Anchorage Police?
Yeah.
Okay. At that point, I'm guessing your daughter had already moved to Arizona, right?
Right.
Okay. And you were talking to her about this. Any of you have any insight into maybe what went on with Jael? Of course, Kendra's was the first one, seemed to have sounded the alarm, contacting your daughter. Your daughter tells you they contact her adoptive mother. None of these people who Jael saw quite a bit had seen her. Anything in your mind, the 12th, 13th, 14th of October, anything going through your mind is what could have happened?
That somebody took her somewhere and did something with her.
That was your first impression. You didn't think that, she ran off. You didn't think that, she could be in the hospital, maybe in a car wreck or something. You thought automatically that something happened to her.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I don't know, the way she was attached to that baby, that baby was her world at that point in time, and no way would Jael have just walked away. You know, that's what everybody kept saying, that she could have just left, or, who knows, that she was afraid of this or afraid of that. You know, there was talk of custody cases with the father of the baby coming after her, and there was never any mention of that, and never would Jael have ever just walked away from that baby. So that
Okay.
Didn't even cross my mind. It was something happened to her. Pretty much that was the first thing, because I knew the type of life that she was living or had lived, and when all of a sudden your phone just shuts off and there's no contact, that wasn't normal.
Okay. Because I have to ask, being that we know that she was involved in prostitution, was Jael did she ever get into any drugs? heroin. We don't, we know weed is an illegal drug, at least some places, but we're talking harder stuff. Heroin, meth, and nothing that's come up since 2014.
No.
And nothing.
There was
Please.
There was some mention of her being at a house that was like a druggy house, but I didn't know if that was true. I know she smoked a little bit of weed here and there, but nothing other than that.
Okay, because I'm sure you would not be surprised, and in many of the cases we cover where women are involved in prostitution, they usually have some sort of addiction as well. That's common. Not all the time. It's just something I have to ask. But to your knowledge, to your daughter's knowledge, people like yourself who knew her the best, you are not aware of any of that.
No.
Okay.
And I've been around a lot of druggy people, and I kind of have a little radar, and never once would I have ever considered her messing with any of that.
Okay. And would you say, once again, though, knowing, once again, just from my experience, I've covered 150 cases, and at least a few of them have covered women who are in prostitution, it's not unusual for some of them to drop out of sight for 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, and then reappear again. That's what makes their disappearances so hard to track, because they often do go away for a few days, then end up coming back, and then there's one time when they don't come back. You're telling me that Jael never did anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
According to Kendra, that there was times that she would leave, but she would always come back or would keep in contact with her,
Okay.
I think Kendra, they had some kind of an iPhone tracker thing on Jael. From what I understand, that Jael would shut that off at certain times, because after Joel was born, I know her and Kendra had split up. They were no longer in a relationship anymore. And I think Jael was kind of trying to separate herself from that whole situation and didn't want to allow Kendra to have that much control over her. And she knew that she had that tracker thing on. And this is from other people that had told me that she had shut that off when she would go out, because she didn't want Kendra to know where she was at.
Okay. Once again, though, this is some of this is hearsay, though. This is you hearing it from other people. This is not something that Jael ever told you personally about shutting a tracker off or anything. Did she ever tell your daughter? And I don't know some of these people. However, I think I can believe your daughter. Did she ever tell your daughter that she was turning this app off?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right. Listeners, we just have to be somewhat clear on that. Okay, so this report's made. Did the police do anything? I should ask this. Being that she was into prostitution, had she ever been caught before? Did she have any charges on her record for doing this? Were the police, I guess what I'm saying is, were the police familiar with her already?
No, not in that way. She did have a warrant out for her arrest, or she was supposed to be doing some kind of community service for a theft, like shoplifting, but never, I wouldn't say that Jael was not a streetwalker. She did this all online. It wasn't like she was selling herself on the streets down here. It was all from word of mouth, or, somebody hooking her up with somebody else.
Okay. Well, I know that some police departments do stuff online too, trying to catch women and men. There are male prostitutes out there too. That's why I'm asking, maybe that, being that you said she had many profiles and was known on the military base, it would seem to me at some point the police might take an interest in that. But you're saying, to your knowledge, they didn't.
I'm aware of, no.
Okay. So what did the police do?
As far as I remember, it took them almost 2 days from the time that the police report was filed to even come to her house. I wasn't there, so I don't know what happened. According to Kendra, they looked in her bedroom. According to Kendra, her phone, her purse, and her phone charger were missing. The bed wasn't made. No clothes had been taken, so she thought maybe she just went out for the evening kind of a thing. What the cops did there, I have no clue. I wasn't there. All I know that they didn't come back to do anything for almost 12 to 14 days before they took her computer. They came and took her car. And that was at least 2 weeks after. They, the cops basically kept pushing it off that she was going to come home, that it wasn't illegal for an adult to be missing, and that because of her lifestyle, they were pretty much poo-pooing it off, is what I would.
That's not uncommon.
Opinion.
Because
she was into sex,
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that we hear that a lot. The listeners know we hear that a lot, and most of the time, the woman or man being involved in illegal, or if they're not involved in illegal stuff, doesn't seem to matter. I think the police departments in most jurisdictions across the United States and Hawaii and Canada, or Hawaii and Alaska, sorry. You're up there. You're way up there. You're way up there, Lisa. They have a similar attitude, and I've covered disappearances in Canada too. They do the same thing. They all think that, a person's going to return, and they don't. So, the attitude that Anchorage had, not uncommon. Unfortunate, but not uncommon. And I don't think that it was anything against Jael personally. Did they try to ping her phone? Was it on that Sunday? I'm guessing your daughter tried to call her. Did it go straight to voicemail? Do you know?
Well, I remember trying to call, and it did not go straight to voicemail, that it rang and rang and rang and rang, and then finally went to voicemail. Looking back on messages and stuff, that it was almost 2 weeks before it went strictly to voicemail, that I recall. The police said that they pinged the phone, or tried to ping the phone, but that there was nothing. They said that there was no ping. So there was no, the detective kept telling me, where do you want me to look? Where do you want me to start? Because they had no clue where to even start. So if they got a ping, they didn't tell us. They just said that they were unable to ping the phone, is all the detective told us.
And they've never told you, because you can go to the phone company and find out where pings happened, of course, before the phone was shut off or the battery died. Did they ever tell you where the last place was that her phone pinged?
No. No.
Okay. Well, we have to remember.
And I didn't have access to her phone records. Kendra had access to her phone records, but the last phone call or text message was from that Army kid at like 3:10 a.m. And then, there was no record of her texting, no record of anybody else calling. It was like, at that point, it was done.
Okay. We're going to talk about that. You just hold on to that thought for a moment. Okay. So the police did question Kendra, Nico, and Jeff, being that they were in the house. They at least talked to them?
Of course, yeah. Apparently.
Okay.
Yes. I wasn't there, but yeah.
Okay. During this time, and you already stated that you had no real interaction with Kendra before Jael disappeared. Did you have any interaction with Kendra after Jael disappeared, maybe in the first week or few weeks after she disappeared?
Mostly just text messages back and forth. I did go over to her house probably within a week or two to pick up stuff that was Joel's. And then, but nothing, not like I went. Well, the Sunday after she went missing, we did go and we passed out flyers we kind of had like a group thing where the news came and we passed out flyers, and the news walked with Kendra and her friends in the back behind her apartment complex, and it was just more of a news broadcast to try to get out for people to help find
Okay.
Jael. But other than that, it
Okay.
was mostly just text messages.
At any point in any interaction you had with Kendra within those first few weeks, did she ever offer up any opinion on what she thought happened to Jael?
No.
None. Did
Not
that?
to me personally.
No. Did maybe to anybody in those? Let's just extend that a little bit. To your knowledge, did she say anything to anybody, your daughter, anybody that you trust, for her own opinion as to what could have happened to Jael?
Not that I'm aware of. I know she had said in a message that, she didn't know if she went out for the evening and, something to that extent, but nothing like, somebody took her, or all she did say that somebody must have picked Jael up, is what she said, because Jael's car was still left
there
at the apartment complex.
Okay.
She didn't drive her car.
All right. So this is what happened the first few weeks, days and weeks after Jael disappeared. Police are trying to do what they can, but they're doing about what is standard in these types of situations. You're passing out flyers. It seems to me that Jael was noticed to be missing fairly quickly. I mean, we've had cases on Unfound where somebody wasn't known to be missing for 6 months. So to be within less than 24 hours is fairly good, but still, she's missing, and of course, she's still missing to this day. We're going to go into what we now call the rest of the case. We're going to dive into some of these things a little bit deeper now. Let's start here. Were any searches done? Official searches, volunteers called out to look around the area, any nearby woods or anything like that?
Official searches, according to the detectives, that they did a few.
Mm-hmm.
Where they did them, I have no clue. They never revealed that. Personal searches, me and a couple of friends, we did walk the woods back behind Kendra's apartment, or Kendra and Jael's apartment, but we didn't know where to start. There was no...
Right.
We didn't know.
Sure.
We were just, finding the needle in a haystack. So there was really no official. There was no dogs that went out. There was no SARS that went out. No police, as far as we knew. 6 months later, the detectives did say that they had done searches. One apparently was with a helicopter. Where they did it, when they did it, I have no clue. But that was mentioned by the detectives.
Do you know at any time, being that she seemed to have a reputation on the nearby military base, do you know if flyers were passed out there? Do you know if any people there were questioned just within the first few weeks after she disappeared? Anybody questioned there, being that everybody, it seems like they were worried about her?
There was the last kid that text messaged her. He was an Army guy. His name was Joel Padilla. As far as we knew, that the police had contacted the military but they had to question him. The security police questioned him and did their own investigation, and then got back to the detectives. The detectives never were allowed to personally have contact with him. We hung flyers all around the base, and we noticed that they were being taken down. I don't know if that's just a coincidence or,
it happens.
You're not allowed to hang posters on things, whatever. But he's the only person I know that was directly associated with the military that they had spoke to. There was another kid named Gabriel, I can't remember his last name, that he text messaged Jael about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and the conversation just kind of stopped.
Let's talk about being that you brought it up, let's talk about those right now, being that you're talking about the phone records. We've mentioned them quite a few times. Let's just give the listeners everything right now. Kendra gave you these phone records. Do you believe she gave you all the records?
As far as I can tell, yeah.
Okay, and so when you say phone records, do we mean what we generally understand? You have like the date and the time and the phone number and, you know, the length of the call, etc. Is this the kind of information she gave you?
Yes.
All right, did she give you like in paper or through a computer file?
It was a snapshot that she took of the paper and sent it to me in a text message.
Okay. All right. And we've talked about a couple important communications that Jael had. This would be going now into October 12th. That would be very early Sunday morning. We've talked about this first text. Who was this first text with, and what was the context of this text?
The first text was from Jael. She texted a friend of hers named Gabriel, asking if he was available to talk or something. She texted him a couple times, and he didn't text back until like 1 o'clock in the morning, and asked, if she was okay or whatever. And she said that she's okay now, but when she had texted him, she was in tears. And that text message was about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the evening. Said that she was upset. Didn't say what she was upset about, and then she asked if he was available to, I don't know, I'd have to look on my phone exactly what it said, but if he was available, and he said that if I'm available, I'm coming over to your house. And she texted back that that wasn't going to be okay, that Kendra wouldn't like it. And then the last message was kind of jumbled, something about her and Kendra decided to do their own thing or something. And then the conversation just quit. And then Gabriel, Sunday evening.
All right, hold on. Let's just talk about that Sunday morning. That's all I want to talk about right for this second. Let's just keep this straight, all right? So the reason you know about this text, though, is because Gabriel gave that to you.
Correct.
All right, he gave that to you, and so you got to see it for yourself. Do you get any kind of feeling that this was going to be some sort of sex hookup or anything like that in this text that he showed you?
Not that I can tell from the text, no.
Okay.
Just that he was going to come over.
Okay. When did he find out, once you did end up getting that text from him and you talked to him about Jael's disappearance, did he have any opinion on what he thought happened to Jael?
He didn't really give an opinion of what he thought had happened to Jael. I had asked why the conversation had just stopped, and he said that he had been out drinking that night and that he passed out. And Jael had said in her text message also that she felt like she was ready to pass out.
Okay.
It was like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. And being that this was a text conversation, this guy's name is Gabriel, is he for sure that was Jael texting with him?
I had asked him that if he thought that was in context with what she would have said, and he didn't seem to think that it wasn't her.
Okay.
Okay. His name was Larson, I remember. Gabriel Larson.
Larson? Okay. So he willingly gave that text to you. Yeah. How soon after, once again, how soon after she disappeared did you get that text?
Probably about 4 or 5 days.
Not long. Okay. And did you even find out did you have to hunt him down, or did he volunteer it, or did you know of it because of the records that Kendra gave you?
I knew of it because of the records. I contacted him.
Okay. But he was not he owned up to the text. Did he ever try to say, no, it wasn't me?
No.
Okay. All right, great. All right, so there was that text conversation, but there's another conversation even later in the morning of October 12th, that's Sunday, at roughly 3 a.m. Why don't you tell the listeners what you learned about that phone call?
And that was an actual phone call. That wasn't a text message. I'd have to look at my thing. I can't find it, but a number came in calling Jael. Lasted, the whole entire conversation was less than 2 minutes.
Okay.
He called her, she called him back, and then he called her back. That ended up being the Army kid, Joel Padilla.
Okay.
According to the police, they had, the security police question him. According to Kendra, with a conversation with him, that he would not indulge to her what that conversation was about. As far as I know, the police did their investigation with him, and then it just kind of went from there. There was nothing further. So,
is he saying that he had this phone call with her and he won't divulge what the content of the conversation was? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. People probably can infer a lot from that. Okay. And is he saying that the two of them never saw each other that night?
He didn't say that directly. When they called him 2 or 3 days after she went missing, he stated that he didn't know Jael, that he didn't recognize her name or whatever, didn't know her at all. And then someone else called him back, and he said that then he admitted that he did remember who she was. And yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So he tried to at the beginning, he tried to deny he even knew Jael.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if they were saying her name Jael, she went by different names when she dated people.
Okay.
So I don't know if they said Jael, or she used to go by Sasha, she used to go by Tiara.
All right, so what you're saying is, if this was a guy that she had met, he's the John, she's the prostitute, that she would not use her real name. So it's plausible that when they ask him, do you know a Jael Hamblen, that he goes, no, I don't know a girl by that name.
Correct.
Because
he was supposed to have gone on a date with her on October 3rd, though. So he did know who she was, whatever name she was using at that point.
Okay. So I guess what we're saying is it sounds suspicious that he said he didn't know her, but could be a reason just because he didn't know her by her real name.
Correct.
Okay, so he has kind of an out there, kind of. I guess. What I mean by that is there could be an explanation for him denying that he know her, because otherwise that is somewhat suspicious. Somewhat.
Correct.
Okay. All right, so this guy's name is Joel, and coincidentally her son's name is Joel.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't even connect those two, though. He was in the Army. He had just moved from Texas to Alaska way after Joel was born.
Okay.
But I don't think, and his real name is Luke. It's Luke Joel Padilla.
Okay.
He's no longer in the Army now. He got out in 2016.
Okay. And I'm not saying that the police would ever have to tell you something like that, Liz, especially since you're not even, Jael's mother, and I'm wondering how much, the police were telling, her mother, even though Jael and her mother did not get along that well. And of course, there is a reason I'm talking to you and not talking to her mother, and it's not something I don't think we want to get into in this conversation. But do you know if Joel ever gave them a solid alibi for that night, for that morning?
I have no clue.
No idea. Okay.
All I know is the police said that they had to go through the security police, and the security police had to do their own investigation, and then they would report back to the detective.
Okay. Now, you did say at least one of these guys, either Gabriel or Joel, said he was going to help with the searches and then never showed up. Which one of those guys was it?
That was Joel Padilla.
Joel Padilla. Okay.
The Army guy.
Okay. All right. And obviously, since he was in the Army, he would have known probably about this memo that was given out to everybody months before that, or whenever that was, that they're supposed to be staying away from her because Jael had an STD that could be transferred from person to person. Okay, so those are the phone records information regarding these two guys. All right, let's get into this now. Now, not only was she missing, but her phone and her purse were missing, but they were eventually found. Let's talk about how that happened and when it happened and how it's a little bit of a coincidence. Why don't you tell the listeners?
Okay, so we hadn't heard anything for a long time. All of a sudden, March 12th, girl text messaged my daughter with pictures of a person holding up a black, big, like, bag-type purse with a dog in the background, and said that someone or the dog had found Jael's purse on a trail over by, it's called Eklutna Lake in Chugiak, Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
That they found the purse, looked in the purse, there was a wallet, and found Jael's Social Security card in the wallet. So they took it to the police, and that's all that girl knew. So when my daughter was questioning her about who found the purse, there was a little bit of coincidental connection to Jael. So the girl that this is going to be confusing, but the girl that contacted my daughter worked with Jael at a temporary agency just prior to Jael going missing. And the guy that found the purse with the dog, his girlfriend was a nanny of another guy that worked with Jael at that same temporary agency. There's a lot of Army connections. This Mike guy, that it was his nanny, was also in the Army. And if we look back, Joel Padilla, Nico Estrada, which is Kendra's new husband, this Mike guy, and multiple other Army guys are all paratroopers in a battalion on Fort Richardson. So when the purse was found, it was a little too much of a connection with all this Army stuff going on, and people that were directly connected to Jael, like what are the odds that the girl and one of the guys worked with her at a temporary agency. Alaska's small. We don't have a whole lot of people, but that's just a little bit of a coincidence for me.
Well, I agree, and I'm going to leave that up to the listeners to determine whether they think that is a coincidence or not. I don't want to go too much into the theory stuff. All that the listeners need to understand is the person or people who found the purse and the phone was in the purse knew Jael. They knew her.
Not directly.
Mm-hmm.
The people that found it didn't know her directly, but there were connections.
Okay. Like if you ever play that game, Kevin Bacon, 6 Degrees of Separation of
Right.
Kevin Bacon, there was like 1 degree of separation between Jael and these people. And the connection was the Army base that Jael had gained a reputation on.
Correct.
Okay. How close is where the purse was found to this base?
About 10 to 15 miles.
And would you say this is a common place for military men to go and
I don't know about military, but the trail that it was found on is a very predominant trail. Multiple people hike, during the winter and during the summer. When they found it, there was still snow on the ground. It's what they call breakup. It was, in the middle of March. The snow had just started to melt. So the purse, when you look at the purse in the pictures, it does look weathered. But when Jael went missing, October 12th of 2014, there was no snow on the ground. And so for that purse to have been on that trail, there's no saying of how far away the trail was that the dog found it. But if there was no snow when the purse tentatively could have been been there in October, there was no snow on the ground, somebody would have seen that purse, unless it could have been shucked into the woods. I'm not really sure.
Right. We're not sure. It's, when we say the trail, I don't want to give the listeners the idea that it was just sitting there right in the middle of the trail where everybody walks.
No.
Okay? That's not what we're saying. We're saying that it was off the trail, to the left or to the right, and it wasn't a human who first found it. It was this person's dog that was just wandering around and kind of happened upon it or something.
Correct.
All right. And unfortunately, we don't know any more than that. I mean, we don't know if the dog picked up the purse and picked it up with its teeth and brought it out into the open. We don't know, do we?
No.
Okay. So we don't know if it was on, quote unquote, on this trail. We don't know if the purse was 2 feet off the trail or it was 10 feet or 30 feet. We don't know.
No.
Okay.
And just to give you a reference of where the trail is,
Mm-hmm.
So the main highway that goes down through from Anchorage to Chugiak, when you get off onto this trail, it's almost 5 to 6 miles off of the highway to get back into this particular recreational area. So, I don't know. Jael didn't hike. Jael was not an outdoorsy person. Jael was kind of a glamour queen. She liked to dress up and liked to be in high heels. And so for her to have been on a hiking trail.
Unusual. You'd be surprised by that.
Yeah, maybe.
Just be a little surprised by that, especially considering how far was it from Anchorage to this trail? How many miles?
At least 15 miles.
All right, so it's not right down the street either. And we have to remember that the last communication she had on the phone, the records, is like 3 in the morning. So once again, we start adding these things up, and it seems somewhat implausible. But even the police, at one point, didn't they, in a statement somewhere, say they believe the purse was planted?
Yeah, Detective Troll was the detective that was on the case, and he stated in an interview that, I can't quote exactly, but that he didn't need people up there planting more information, and that's why they weren't giving out the locations of the searches that they did.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's pretty clear. I mean, I realize that we can look at, once again, doing this for 3 years, you can look at the word planted in a few different ways. But I don't think he gives any doubt in the way he uses it that he does not believe that Jael was the one who put her purse there. No.
Correct.
Okay. All right, but her purse and her phone, and maybe just remind the listeners, how long after she disappeared were they found?
About 6 months.
6 months. Okay, thank you. Let's talk about, of course, her phone was found. Were they able to unlock it? Do you know? Sometimes if she has an iPhone, they automatically lock. You have to have a code. Do you know anything about that?
According to her mother, that when they found the phone, that it was smashed and they were unable to receive any information off of it.
All right. It was damaged. It was damaged?
Yes.
Okay. And would you happen to know, did Jael have any credit cards, any cash, anything that would be of value to a thief? Any of those things found?
No.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about Jael's other stuff now. Besides that, we still have to talk about her Explorer. Did they do anything with that? It was left in the parking lot where she was living with Kendra and others. What happened to the Explorer? Did they go over it? Any information that they gleaned from it? Once again, to your knowledge.
The only thing I know that somebody had vandalized her car the following Sunday when it was in the parking lot. The same day that we had gone to pass out the flyers and then I think it was at least 2 weeks after she had originally been reported missing. The cops even went through her vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
The keys they didn't know where the keys were, so I don't know how they got the keys or if they broke into the vehicle or whatever, but they took her vehicle and they still have it. They've never released it.
They still have it. Wow.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So they still have it to this day. We don't know if the vehicle, the Explorer, plays a factor in her disappearance at all. Do we? Anything?
Not for a fact, no.
Okay. Now, something that you told me is that, of course, Jael still had all of her other stuff at Kendra's place, and Kendra eventually called you. When did she call you, and why did she call you?
We had conversations about getting Joel's stuff from her after Jael's mother took custody of Joel. So I had been back and forth picking up that stuff. And then within 2 to 3 weeks, Kendra had packed up Jael's stuff and wanted me to pick up her stuff also.
Did you ask her why? Did you ask her why?
I recall not directly asking why, but she said that they were getting married and that she wanted to clear all the stuff out because Nico was going to be moving in permanently.
And at that point, did you ask her, well, what about Jael? What if Jael comes back? What if did that come up? I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just wondering if it came up.
No, there was always discussion of it, but I remember her saying specifically that before any of her family members came in and ransacked her stuff, that she wanted me to have it. I don't know how they would have gotten into her house to get the stuff or who would have even wanted it. To tell you the truth, nobody wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
Her mother didn't want it. Kendra didn't want it. So I took it because I figured that Jael would be coming home, so I kept all of her stuff. It was all of her clothes, her birth certificate, her passport, documentation from the housing thing. There was a restraining order from her father, clothes, like I said, jewelry, yearbooks, all that stuff. So I kept it, and my daughter had come home, I think maybe for Christmas or something, and we had gone through it, repacked it up because it was all just in array, and repacked it up. And the only thing her mom wanted at one point was the passport and her birth certificate to be able to prove relation to Joel, so Joel could get on WIC and get food stamps or something, because they had an ongoing court case battle with Kendra for custody. And at this point, I've kept all the jewelry and stuff, her clothes, I've given away. It's been 5 years.
Well, hold on. Let's we go too far into this. So did you think it was unusual when she asked you to take this stuff? Did you find it unusual?
Yes.
Okay. That's what we're trying to. That's what I'm trying to get at here. That's what I'm trying to get at. I'm just asking you for your opinion at the time. When she asked you to take that stuff out, Jael's just missing a couple weeks, and all she wants to do is talk about getting Jael's stuff out of there, as if Jael never existed.
That she was moving on.
Okay. But one thing she didn't give you was Jael's computer, correct?
No.
Okay. Did you ever talk to Kendra about that computer?
Yeah, I had asked who had the computer. I didn't know if she had the computer or the cops had computer, because there was a bunch of information that was being deleted off of Facebook, off of Jael's Facebook page, that I had specifically seen and had taken screenshots of, and that content was gone. From October 10th to October 16th was missing and she didn't have any explanation of why it happened. She thought that maybe my computer was glitching. There was mention of maybe that the cops had removed it, but the cops didn't have her computer at the time. They didn't even take her computer for almost 2 to 3 weeks after she had been reported missing.
Okay, so when you got the stuff, you didn't get the computer, but the computer was eventually given to the police?
Correct. As far as I know, yes.
Okay. I'm also thinking, being that we know that her phone disappeared, is it not possible that whoever had Jael's phone could have also deleted that stuff? You know, with through the Facebook app. Well, right. If she had their phone, that would be automatic almost. I don't think anybody has a password into their Facebook account on their phone, you know, in the app. But maybe. But so that's also a possibility that whoever had her phone could have done that as well. All right. Yeah. Were Nico, Jeff, and Kendra ever given or ever asked to take polygraph tests in relation to Jael's disappearance?
According to Kendra, that she was asked, looking back, that she stated that Jeff nor Nico were asked. She explained to me that she was unable to take a polygraph test because of medication that she was on, that they told her that it wouldn't work. So she was unable to take the polygraph test, according to her. She did say that she made a statement, but that there was no other statements. You know, the detectives didn't talk to me. They didn't tell me who they took a statement on, and they didn't. This is all, you know, from...
This is all from Kendra, and I know that a lot of people are going to be suspicious of her, so we have to preface this with, you know, knowing we're not sure if Kendra's telling the truth or not. But she's saying, but even so, she is saying she didn't take a polygraph. Whether that's the truth or not, she's saying she was asked, and she's saying she didn't do it.
Correct.
All right. Okay. And I know, the listeners should know, you have sent me many, many, many screenshots of text that you've had back and forth with Kendra. I don't know over the span of time and everything, but many. You've sent me many, and that's great. I appreciate that. It takes a lot of time to do that. Once again, and we're going to talk about Kendra in depth a little bit more here in a moment, but once again, in all the conversations that you've had with her, has Kendra ever said, I think this happened to Jael, and I think this person did something to her?
No.
No. But we have to remember that it was Kendra that was seemingly in business with Jael as far as introducing Jael to men at the Army base and elsewhere.
Correct.
So she's involved in all this stuff with Jael, but she's never offered up any explanation, not even a theory, not just shooting the breeze. Nothing.
Nope.
Okay. All right. And I guess Kendra never said anything about anybody coming over to the house, hearing a car pull up, or anything like that.
No, she said she was sleeping.
Okay. Well, let's move into that right now, because she said she was sleeping, but her Facebook use says something different. Why don't you tell the listeners about that?
Well, there was something that she had tagged Jael in. It wasn't until Sunday at about 9:53 a.m. She tagged her in a meme that said something to the point of missing somebody and no return phone call is something blah, 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 blah. Like, it's disheartening or something. And it kind of caught my eye that, so she sent it at 9:53 a.m. that morning.
Okay.
And that is prior to her texting Jael, asking her where she was at. And the meme that was on there had been posted July 12th at 3:10 a.m. And it just, again, could be a coincidence that whoever that person was that posted it at 3:10 a.m. on July 12th, but that's exactly when that last conversation happened with that Army guy. And it, you know, again, it could be a coincidence, but it just kind of caught my eye.
I guess what I'm asking is there proof? She's saying she was asleep, but are you saying that there's proof? There's somewhat proof if you want to believe social media, and when we mean social media, we mean Facebook. Is there proof that she was actually awake at 3-something that morning? Is that what you're saying?
I don't have proof that she. Well, yeah, because she posted it at 9:53.
Well, that's 9:50. That's 9:53 a.m. I'm talking about 3 a.m. when Jael was communicating with that one guy, you know, at 3 a.m.
Yeah, it's just the meme was posted at that particular
And who
time.
posted that meme at 3 a.m.?
Some Facebook page. I would have to look at it.
Okay, so it's possible, though, that Kendra got up that morning and just happened to see that and then reposted it.
Possible.
Okay, but I guess what I'm asking is, did Kendra at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. ever use her social media account, and then that would contradict that she said she was sleeping?
I never saw that.
Okay.
But there was multiple messages and multiple content off of Kendra's Facebook page that was deleted also.
Okay, but we can't say what we were deleted. We can only know what we saw. Did you? You know,
Well,
we didn't see. You didn't see anything.
I saw them and took screenshots of, not at that particular time, but I took screenshots of when she posted that meme to her Facebook page, when she posted other things to her Facebook page, tagging Jael in them all Sunday. And it just kind of, you know, if she thought that she was missing or thought that something was wrong, but she was still tagging Jael in these things, it just seemed odd to me.
Well, it may seem odd, but I'm not here to defend her, but it also, on the other hand, you know, and I hate to theorize too much, but it maybe could be she was trying to get Jael's attention. And she knew by tagging her in something that it would post on Jael's account that Kendra was, you know, posting stuff, and she was hoping that Jael would respond.
Yeah.
Right? All right. All I care about is I'm just asking for a very black and white question. Is there any proof that Kendra was using her social media account that morning while Jael was talking to these guys? Did you ever see anything like that?
Not that I'm aware
of. Okay. All right.
All
right. Thank you. All right. What is Kendra's past? Do we know? I mean, I'm not saying you found that out days or weeks after Jael disappeared, but does she have a criminal record in Alaska?
She has a couple things on what they call court view. I know she has a stalking thing. Possibly, if I remember, there was a domestic violence one, a restraining order here and there.
Against her, where she was the guilty party, or she was restraining somebody else?
She was the guilty party.
She was the one that was trying to be restrained. Do you know who? Do not say their names, but do you know who these people are?
No, not personally.
Okay. I'm just wondering if in court view you can see their names. Okay, well, I'm sure somebody's going to look into that. Okay, so she's had some run-ins with some people trying to keep her away. And you said that she does these taxes and everything. How old is she roughly, or how much older was she than Jael?
About almost 14, like 15 years older.
Okay, so she was about 35 then when Jael disappeared? Yeah. Okay, so she'd be roughly 40 now, something like that. Yeah. Okay. Do you know of any proof of anything where it seems like Kendra took quite a liking to Jael, you know, back in 2011? It seems that that's the way I'm going to put it. Do you know of her ever treating other girls like that before Jael came along?
I was contacted by multiple people during this whole thing, from girls that were very adamant that I not say to her specifically that they contacted me, and said very extremely similar situations to the lifestyle that Jael was living with Kendra that was happening with them also. One girl in particular is like still to this day extremely, like, deathly afraid of Kendra, afraid that she was going to do things, and quote unquote she would send her people.
I want to talk about, and we'll talk about that in a second. So you're saying that it seems like Kendra, if she was doing with Jael what we think, not just the personal intimate stuff, but the business, kind of, I guess, pimping for Jael, you're saying that there's maybe some proof that she had done this before with other women, other young girls, 18, teenagers, 19.
According to those girls.
According to them. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she told me that she has been a mentor of multiple troubled teens.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't say in what aspect, but that she has helped multiple troubled teens. So Jael was 17 when Kendra met her online. According to Kendra, that she didn't tell her her age, but she was a minor when she met her, and I think she knew it, but I don't really know for sure.
Do you know?
Her mother.
Okay. All right. So you're saying then that, do you know if she has ever been charged with any prostitution charges herself? Kendra herself.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Being that she seemed to know so many guys at the Army base, but it seems that she was able to avoid charge. Please.
That she would even know. The only way she got involved with those Army people or those military people is probably from her husband, from Nico.
Nico. Okay.
That, Kendra never had any association with the military prior to that. So
Jeff, or her previous husband was not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, you've already mentioned. Please.
But Kendra's parents were Air Force, but that there was, she didn't have access to the base. Jael didn't have access to the base until people signed her on. On any military base, to get anybody on, you have to go through an office, and you have to show identification.
Yeah.
So if there were records of her being signed on with other soldiers, that would be out there. But that's nothing that, I wouldn't have access to.
Right.
Or I'm not even sure if the detectives would have access to that, because it's military information,
Sure.
But.
Sure. Okay. You had already mentioned this. You said that some people were afraid of Kendra, and let's talk about that a little bit more. This is a conversation that you've had with, I believe, one girl in particular regarding this. Why don't you talk a little bit more about that?
Just the fact that every person that contacted me pinpointed at Kendra that she had threatened Jael, that she had threatened them at some point, that just they were, like I said, they were adamantly making sure that I was not going to contact Kendra and tell her that they had contacted me. These were other people who had lived with her, who had been roommates with her, who had been roommates with her and Jael at the same time. That basically the same scenario had happened, and that those girls got out of the situation and were kind of, relating to what Jael's situation was at the time.
Okay. But they said that they were afraid that Kendra was going to send her people after them.
Yeah, her people. And multiple people said her people. And I kept saying, well, who's her people? and nobody could really justify or say who her people were.
Mm-hmm.
One of the girls did say that her people, quote unquote, came to her job and were watching her. I don't know, what they were watching her for, or I don't know, but that apparently Kendra had people is all. That's what everybody kept saying.
Okay. And so to this day, we're doing this interview on October 27th, 2019, just over 5 years after Jael disappeared. You still have no idea what they mean by her people.
No.
And these girls have never told you who these people are. These guys in a gang? Are they Kendra's brothers? Or, nothing. They've never given any insight who they think these people are at all.
No. One person said something about a seer, that a seer is like a higher being of some kind of...
Somewhat what we're talking about is the metaphysical?
Yeah.
Like witchcraft and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Okay, we're not going to talk about that. Okay. Yeah. All right, we don't do psychics and stuff like that on the program. Because I'm not a believer in it, and most experts in the missing persons community dismiss all that type of things, psychics and everything. So if we're going to do that, then we're going to have to dismiss anybody that wants to talk about how she's going to send her people and they're like seers who are going to put spells on them or something. We're just going to have to stay away from all that. All I'm interested in is physical harm, threats, things like that. That's what I'm asking you about.
I do know that Kendra, that there were multiple times when Jael worked at JCPenney's that Kendra was escorted out of JCPenney's for threatening Jael. She also wasn't allowed into one of the local malls down here because Jael worked in there and she caused some kind of a scene in there. The explicit whatevers. I can't say, but
what were those, being that, and this is, once again, I'm going to say it's confusing to the listeners because Jael kept going back to live with her.
Correct.
Okay. Even though there was these threats and everything going on, did anybody who worked at JCPenney's or the mall ever tell you or your daughter what the content of these arguments were that they saw?
No, not directly. I know Jael specifically, I think it was like New Year's Eve night, I don't remember what year, that she spent the night in the bathroom of JCPenney's at the mall because she was afraid to go home. And that one I know for a fact because my daughter went and picked her up.
Okay.
From there.
What were the arguments about?
I don't know. And, it might just have been everyday, normal, domestic disputes. I don't really know. But I know that she was banned specifically from the one mall, that not the one that has JCPenney's in it, but a different one, that Jael worked in some store in there. She was banned and was not allowed to go back into it, or she was going to be arrested.
Okay.
And then also at JCPenney.
So it seems, I'm not trying to be humorous about this, but it seems that Kendra really doesn't have any people. It sounds to me like if Kendra wants something to threaten somebody, she just does it herself. If she was wanting to threaten Jael, why didn't she send, quote-unquote, her people to do it? Once again, I know you're not the one saying this. It's just when people start saying her people and they can't give me any more than that, I start to wonder about the truthfulness of that and the sanity of the person, etc. I'm just being honest with you. And the listeners know I'm like that. I know a lot of them are like that as well. Okay, but it does seem, but the fear is real. Whether these people exist or not, the fear is real.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jael did specifically tell me, I know she told my daughter, and I know she told her mother that Kendra had threatened her that if she ever took that baby away from her, that she would kill her. She specifically told me that to my face.
What do you think it was about that baby, about Joel, that got Kendra so fired up?
I don't really know. You know, according to Jael, that Kendra couldn't have any more kids or something, or wouldn't have any more kids, you know, because they were old. Her kids were older, and so she wanted another baby, desperately wanted another baby. So Jael went out and got pregnant, and according to Jael, that the father of the baby was one of her clients.
Right.
And that apparently he raped her. And, you know, there were multiple times that, first off, the Jael claimed that she was raped. I've seen documentation from hospitals that she went in and had rape tests done. At the same time, I think Jael might have, not that.
Let me just get right down to this. Do you think that Kendra wanted Jael to get pregnant so Kendra could claim that baby as her own?
Tentatively, that she could have taken him away. That's why all these power of attorneys.
Right. Well, let's talk about this. So Jael disappears. Joel now doesn't have a mother. Kendra tried to get custody of Joel, but that didn't work. You know, what happened there?
So Kendra had Joel, and she had this power of attorney, and she was going to keep Joel, and Colleen went to the courts to get temporary custody, like emergency temporary custody. Kendra had specifically said to me in a conversation that since Jael was missing, that she was going to send Joel away out of state to Jael's biological mother in Colorado, that woman had never even met him. And that alerted me, and I contacted Jael's mom and told her that, and then they did an emergency court order for her to go get him, and the police went over to Kendra's house and took Joel away from Kendra. Even though she had the power of attorney, she kept saying that she had custody of him because she had power of attorney, but that power of attorney had never been filed in the court, so it didn't hold up, and they gave her mom custody of Joel. But then they had multiple custody cases after that, which I didn't understand because, you know, legally Kendra had no right to Joel, and they had Kendra and her husband, Jeff Vincent, in there, and there was multiple cases that they went in and discussed, and the lawyer, not the judge, the lawyer, Colleen's lawyer, her mom, kept putting off the final judgment. I don't know if they were waiting for Jael to show up, but this was like July of the next year, you know, of 2015, when they finally did the final say that Colleen had full custody of him.
So Jael's mother and Kendra were going to battle over Joel.
Yeah, Kendra didn't fight for him. You know, once they took him away that first time, she knew that she had no right to him. But
okay.
They've battled since Kendra first met Jael. They hate each other. They talk trash about each other. You know.
Jael's mother and Kendra.
Yeah.
They did not get along.
Constantly. No.
Okay, but it doesn't sound like Jael got along with her mother either, so maybe that's not so unusual. Yeah, you know, we just I don't know. You know, I don't know what to think of all of that. I'm not sure if we're supposed to pick a side or not. You know, who could be right and who could be wrong. But the important part to understand is maybe Kendra, it seems, was going to try to send this baby away, and Colleen, Jael's adoptive mother, stopped it.
Yeah.
Okay. And is there any word over the last 5 years that Kendra has tried to, I'm just going to be asking you this, kidnap him?
No.
Nothing like that? Nothing like that?
No.
Okay.
She hasn't had any contact.
Okay.
Never tried.
Okay. And let's talk about this, and I've already explained this to the listeners, that you've had several conversations with Kendra. All right, several. Wide range of topics, and it would take us another 2 hours, already over 2 hours into this interview, or about 2 hours. It would take probably another 2 hours to talk about every conversation that you've ever had with her. Can you give the listeners an idea of Kendra? Having spoken to her through text and everything, her personality, being that you didn't know her, you heard about her before Jael disappeared, now that you've had a chance to talk to her and talk to her about a bunch of different topics, how would you explain her to people?
How would I explain her?
I mean, she sounds, once again, I think a lot of people are going to come away from this interview thinking that she is responsible for Jael's disappearance, and we are not saying that. Okay, we are not saying that. We're just going over the facts. We're talking about dates and times and what people have said, etc. That's all we're doing. But I realize maybe it doesn't look good for her. People are going to be suspicious of her, of Jeff, of Nico. But as a person, talking to her since, how would you? She sounds like an unusual person. Almost put the disappearance to the side. She's living with one husband. The other husband's living there. She's having these threesomes, with her, husband and Jael, and then wanting to get custody of Jael's son. I mean, she sounds like a handful.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't trust her as far as I could throw her.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of the conversations that we had, it was all about her, about how she was feeling, about what she was doing. Poor pitiful me, showing me pictures of, how swollen her face was, because of crying, just a little bit of, I don't know, maybe a little bit of narcissist.
Okay.
Yeah.
That doesn't make a person, we should say, that doesn't make a person a murderer, okay? I'm just saying you've had interaction with her. I haven't. Nobody else has. Anybody that's listening to this, except maybe for your daughter, nobody else has. So that's why I was asking you to try to explain, the kind of woman she is.
Yeah.
Okay. Just a kind of unusual person.
Yeah, unusual.
Okay.
And every person that I've had any discussions with in the past 5 years, there hasn't been not one person that has just agreed with the fact that they think somehow that Kendra is either directly or indirectly involved.
Okay. After Jael disappeared, being that you stated that you believe she tried to pull, this with other girls before Jael, do you know if she took in any other girls after Jael? Some other girl who was going to prostitute herself, and she was, and Kendra was going to introduce that girl to guys at the base. Do you know if she continued to do this after Jael disappeared?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. And kind of just said this in passing. Is just one more unusual thing about this case. Did Nico and Kendra end up getting married in October of 2014 anyway, even though Jael disappeared?
Yeah, they were supposed to get married on the 31st of October. They were going to have a Halloween party, and they ended up getting married on the 26th.
They got married sooner.
Instead of the 31st. Yeah.
Sooner instead of later.
Correct.
Huh.
And I don't know, Nico was only 21 and Kendra is 35.
Okay.
So another pattern of, I don't know, what I would consider manipulative or a predator situation. Nico was extremely I met him one or twice, not that I could say personal, but I would consider him a very naive person.
Mm-hmm.
And for him to have gotten wrapped up in that situation, seemed a little weird to me that he would be with her.
Well, I don't know. I'm not going to get. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to get. I don't know if we want to get into that. People marry people and have all sorts of different relationships. I mean, he's 21, and it's not like he's 16 or something, and he's in the military. If he wants to have a relationship with her, then he can go and do that. She doesn't sound like my type of woman, but, what am I to say? Yeah. All right, so, but to add to this, after Jael disappears, they get married, but they went to Italy, correct?
Correct.
And who? Okay, and who ended up staying in the house?
Jeff and the kids stayed in that house. Kendra and Nico went to Italy, but then later I heard that the kids went to Italy, but now they're back. I don't know if the kids are back, but I think she's back here in Alaska, and Nico is stationed at a completely different base.
Do you know if they're separated? Do you know if they're still married?
I think they're still married. I don't even know if they're not like separated. They're just not living with each other.
Okay.
There was no mention of them not, being a couple anymore, other than the fact that she wasn't living with him anymore.
Okay.
And
do you know anything about Jeff Vincent? What's become of him since he watched their kids, then the kids went to Italy, and do you know anything of what's become of him?
No.
Okay.
I only saw him once.
Okay. Okay, and we have to remind, maybe it's not so unusual. He's watching the kids. They are his kids he had with Kendra. So maybe that's not so unusual. They get married, and, maybe some kids should be so lucky that an ex-wife and an ex-husband can arrange something like that. Okay. Where does this case stand now? It's October of 2019. Let me ask you this. I'm sure you and your daughter have had many conversations about this over the last 5 years. If you can say, what has your daughter said about it?
She talks about it, but she gets upset about it.
Mm-hmm.
And,
sure.
I think, she's pretty convinced that Jael's not coming back. But you have to have some kind of hope,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. A couple months ago, the police had contacted Jael's mom about dental records. Back in 2015, I think they took DNA from Joel. So in case if they ever found her body, that they could cross-reference it right then and not have to worry about getting it,
Yeah.
So when they contacted her mom, they were asking about dental records because they had found a skull, and it was from a woman, but it ended up not being her. And, my daughter kind of shuts down. She doesn't really, it makes her upset, like this past October 12th. She moved back to Alaska, and she was extremely upset because her best friend's not coming back, and nobody knows what happened. And it kind of seems like it's just gone away,
Mm-hmm.
Like we still talk about it, and people still ask to join Jael's Facebook page. It's called Jael Hamblen Missing. People still come on there, but nobody comments, nobody gives any updates or, in the beginning it was all this, hype and people saying this and saying that and a lot of, publicity and stuff, and it's just kind of gone away, to tell you the truth. I don't even think the same detective that was on her case is still
probably not
at APD.
Probably not. That's pretty common too. Yeah. Huh. Yeah, well, I know. I cover cases that are 30, 40, 50 years old. And, sometimes you just never know when new things are going to pop up. But we do talk a lot about how cases, they get updates and all of a sudden there's nothing. That does happen. I know it sucks. But that's pretty much true with all the cases that I've covered, that there'll be a flurry of activity and then there'll be nothing for a long time, and then maybe something will come up, and then, these missing persons cases are tough. Even when you have decent suspects and you have phone information and, and you find her phone and her purse and everything, they're still very, very difficult. Very difficult. Being that you aren't in the family, I guess you aren't really kept in the loop, right? You have to kind of, you know the detective's name, but if let's put it this way, if remains were found and they might be Jael's, do you think they'd call you?
I don't think they would call me. I'm sure they would call her mother.
Sure.
They contacted her mother about the dental records, and then she mentioned that to Lane. So, Lane still goes and sees Jael's son. He's 5 now. He lives, less than 5 miles away from me. So she goes and sees him and still has a relationship with him. I don't think that they've ever, done any kind of a DNA test to try to find his father. There's been no, she's never tried to take over Jael's estate, to try to claim her death. I don't know. There's just never been any correspondence on that side.
Okay.
And everybody deals with things in a different way. That was a big ordeal in the beginning, that her mom wasn't participating and wasn't being a part of it. And looking back, who am I to judge to say how she should act? I
just don't know. Right.
Yeah. There was no interaction from either side of her family. There was a couple aunts on her her adopted mother's that kind of commented, but there was no interaction from her father's side. There was it was kind of like nobody cared. That's the biggest reason I think why I got involved, was because none of her family members were stepping up to the plate and making a big issue out of it. So,
yeah.
But everybody deals with things in their own way.
Sure. Sure. We started out this conversation talking about how you did get involved, and very quickly. You said it was October 14th, so just a few days after, and now you've just stated why that is. What's this been like for you? I stated, once again, early on that you could have never probably foreseen that you would be doing something like this in your life, and especially considering that Jael's not your daughter, is not in your family. You're actually doing this, for your daughter's, best friend. And what's this experience been like for you?
Not a good one. If anything, it brought what I would call more situational awareness to me. I look at things in a different way and pay attention to people more. I think now that this has all happened, I follow other missing persons pages, and try to help spread the word when other people are missing because of that. And, before, it wasn't in my backyard. It wasn't on my swing set. So it wasn't important to me, and I think that's kind of why I had said to you the other day that I appreciated you guys reaching out, because you guys have been involved in that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When it's not in your backyard, people don't pay attention. And I would never have in a million years thought that my daughter's best friend would be missing for 5 years. Never, ever, 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 and for people to be so unaware of what's going on, and people going, "Oh, I've never heard of that story," or
Yeah.
it just,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there needs to be more, not publicity, but more awareness of people who are missing. Especially like in Alaska, there's over 1,200 people that are listed on the missing persons cases.
Yeah.
And I know you had said that most states don't have a missing persons unit in their police.
A lot don't. Most don't. Most don't. That's right. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you may, even in, cases that eventually get handled by the state police, pick a state, whichever state you want to pick. Most of even those officers, detectives, have next to zero experience in missing persons cases. And especially not ones that go on for 10, 20 years.
Yeah. I think, just looking back at other cases that have been solved recently, that people, not that I'm not bashing APD, but I don't know. If this had happened in Wasilla, where we have the Alaska State Troopers, the troopers are, so much more active in that type of situation. They've found multiple missing person people and have solved multiple things, and because Wasilla is a small town, and APD, it's the homicide detectives that are in charge of her case, and they have too many other things to do.
Yeah.
There was multiple times that I had emailed and returned, phone calls. Basically, any information that I got from anybody, I passed that on to the detectives. I let them deal with it. Whatever they did with it is what they did with it. But there was never any correspondence saying, "Hey, thanks, we got your information." Not that I needed to be acknowledged, but the fact that I knew that they were getting the information that I was sending them could have been nice, that they could have said, "Hey, we got this. Just okay, thanks. Blah 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 blah." I don't even know. It was a breath of fresh air when they contacted her mom about those dental records, that they had actually said, "Hey, this could be Jael." And anytime anybody is found, people contact me. "Did you see this? Did you see this?" And I'm like, "Well, we can't do anything about it until whatever." But I don't know. I just feel like the ball was dropped in the beginning of this whole case because of her lifestyle, and that it wasn't taken as seriously as people should have taken it. And I think that there possibly could have been a different outcome with this whole thing if APD had stepped up to the plate and made a bigger issue of it. The state's a huge state, and for people to find bodies or to find whatever, there are so many places that anybody could be dumped. And we have wildlife that, bears and other animals that eat things, and lots of times they'll find a bone and they don't even know who it belongs to because it's been dragged off by a bear, So, I don't know.
It's
I
tough.
don't know if we'll ever find
I know this, you know all about Jael's case, and I know about all these other cases, and unfortunately I'm here to tell you that most of the things that you've experienced in the last 5 years are not unusual. Whether the woman was a sex worker or was an accountant, it's pretty much the same. Now, there may be some extreme examples that we can think about. I'm sure if I thought about with the cases that Unfound is covered, where it did seem that the police didn't take it seriously because the person was into drugs and this and that. But I got to tell you, in retrospect, I don't know how much of a difference it would have made. I don't know. I think that they should just take these seriously because that's their job and these are real people.
Right.
I'm not saying that any of these cases would be, maybe they might be a little further along. I don't know how many of them would really be solved. But, there is an overall attitude with the police that, oh, these people are just going to come back. Don't worry about it. That's very common. Very, very common. Very common.
One thing I did want to mention, so when they found her purse, that was March 12th.
Mm-hmm.
And again, just a little bit of a coincidence that, Joel's birthday is on the 10th. Not that there's any correlation to that, but it just kind of crossed my mind. Kendra was also out of town. She left on the 11th of March. She contacted me somehow knowing that the purse had been found. I don't know how she knew because I didn't contact her and let her know.
That's interesting.
But, yeah, it was kind of like maybe a milestone, like nothing had happened, and then all of a sudden, again, coincidence,
Mm-hmm.
And coincidence that somebody else, or that somebody who found it, had some kind of relation to her, or you could see in the picture, you could see the phone in the purse, the indent, in the purse. If I found somebody's purse that I knew that was missing, I wouldn't have been picking anything up and taking it to the police department. I think I would have left it there and called the police, because they kind of disturbed evidence.
Yeah, just never know. I just never know that something you're going to find on a trail, somebody's going to, the odds of that happening, you finding something on a trail somewhere and having to do with an unsolved missing persons case is so small that I'm going to say I'm not surprised that the people picked it up. I wish they would have left it where it was, but I'm not surprised. I don't know. I mean, I'm way more suspicious about how close they have a connection to Jael than them actually picking the thing up and taking it to the police department. And,
at that time also, the police had come out with an official description of what she was wearing, because so we found out about the purse, and the police were not going to put that out there. They were not going to let anybody know that had happened. And we contacted the news, and the news did a report on it, basically, is what they did. And the detectives were not very happy about it. And then about a day, maybe two after that, they came out with an official report about what she was wearing. And we thought maybe they had gotten some content off of her phone, that if she took a selfie or whatever it was. But they had found she had gone to a bank. They said the night she disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't know if she went to the bank on the 11th or if it was the 12th. They never said. But that they have footage of her at an ATM taking money out, and described what she was wearing. It was similar to what I described her wearing at Best Buy when I saw her that day, but she had a scarf on that was different. She had the same black petticoat and jeans and a pair of black boots. Well, those black boots, I don't know if they were the exact black boots, but the ones that she was wearing the day that I saw her were in her stuff when I got her stuff.
Oh.
So if she had, I don't know.
Well, she did. The thing is, everybody recognizes she did go home, so she could have changed out of the boots.
Yeah.
Right.
It was just a coincidence to me that why the police all of a sudden announced that they had footage at that particular time. Like, why wouldn't they, I don't know, if they just found that out 6 months later?
I don't know. I don't know. Do you have is there a Facebook, you already said there's a Facebook page. Why don't you tell the listeners about that? Which Facebook page is it?
It's called Jael Hamblen Missing. Okay. It was just a way for people to stay connected on updated information. I pretty much approve anybody who is local. You know, there are some out-of-state people that have connections with other people. If they're out of the country, I don't accept them because I don't want them, you know, putting up ads and stuff. But nobody can post on there without me approving the post, because there was a lot of things that were being posted that was false information and hearsay and, you know, stuff like that. But
I know the feeling.
it hasn't had a lot of action lately. Nobody posts on there anymore.
Okay. Okay. So why don't you give it out again? Jael Hamblen missing.
Yeah, Jael Hamblen missing.
Okay. And are you the administrator on there?
I am.
Okay. All right. Okay, great. Any last words before we complete this interview, Lisa?
Just that, you know, we wish somebody would come forward, and somebody has to know something. You know, somebody had to have heard, or somebody would have had to have talked or something. You know, no matter what happened or how it happened, all we want is to put Jael to rest, if that's the case. Is just to finalize what happened, you know, for her son's sake, first off.
Right.
And for everybody else's peace of mind, you know, no matter what happened, just, you know, if somebody was to say where she's at, because at this point, you know, she's still considered a missing persons case, not a homicide, which that had been stated in one of the articles. It hasn't been moved to homicide because there's no body. You know, the detectives in Alaska say that they have to have enough evidence to prosecute or name a suspect.
Yep.
And at this point, there is no evidence that she's dead until we have a body. So until they have a body, they cannot arrest anybody. They cannot name a person of interest because we have no body. So if somebody out there knows approximately where she's at, or if we can get that body, then somebody can be prosecuted and somebody could pay for whatever happened to Jael. But until then, it's just out there in lingo, you know, in limbo.
Yep.
Because we don't have proof that she's actually dead, so nobody can be held accountable.
That is the story everywhere, pretty much everywhere. I've covered, I've covered 150 cases, and only, of the ones where the body has not been found, only 2 of them have actually gone to trial. Only 2. Angie Yarnell, and then a case that we just covered here recently, Kamisha Hollis. Only 2 out of 150. That's not a very good percentage.
Yeah. No.
So, these cases are tough, and with no bodies, no DNA, no signs of violence, no blood, you know, no video evidence, nothing. It's very difficult, and that's one of the reasons prosecutors don't want to have anything to do with them.
Yeah. And the police have never even said that they suspect foul play.
Yep.
You know, they've never said anything.
Yep. Yep. Well, Lisa,
Something's in her car.
Maybe.
Because they had it, and they wouldn't even let us take. She just bought that brand new car seat for Joel. They wouldn't let us get that out, and they wouldn't let us get the diapers out. Like, what does that have to do with any of it, you know? But if they still have her car, something, you know, I don't know why it was parked back in her car.
Maybe. I could tell you many cases where they gave back the car the same day they found it. In cases where the person disappeared with their car. Very common for people to get cars back the same day, but then there are other cases I've covered where the cars are still in police custody years later. It just depends. And I don't know what it depends on, but it just depends. But Lisa, I think you did a great interview this evening, even though, once again, Jael's not in your family, but I can tell that you care deeply about her. I know that your daughter cares deeply about her. And as I tell all of the guests that are on the program, this is just the beginning of you and I getting to know each other. You know, I want to continue to help you in any way I can. You know, any opinions, anything else that goes on. You know, if you need help, you know, having insight or anything, you let me know.
Yeah,
Okay.
appreciate it.
Okay. And I appreciate you being on this episode of Unfound.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys contacting us. Hopefully we'll hear something.
You're very welcome.
And that was my interview with Lisa Lake, mother of Jael Hamblen's best friend. I thank her for joining me and all of you on this episode. I also want to say I have so much respect for non-family members who get involved so deeply as Lisa has done. It's very unique, and I wish more disappearances had people like Lisa. As much as there is going on in this case, it essentially breaks down into two choices. Either something happened inside the house, and that would certainly involve Kendra, Jeff, and Nico, or something happened outside the house, and that would possibly involve Joel Padilla, who was seemingly the last person to talk to Jael. Yet there are problems with each pick. The motive for Kendra and company is hard to understand. Even if it was to gain custody of Jael's son, could Kendra really believe the paperwork she had would fool anyone, since nothing was ever filed with any court? And really, it seems Kendra forgot all about Jael's son as soon as she went to Italy. And even if the motive was that Kendra didn't like Jael moving out, as Jael was about to do, other girls had left Kendra and lived, and Kendra seemed just fine with it. Although we did hear about Kendra's alleged people, a story that I just don't believe. And with Joel Padilla, if he killed Jael, why would he put her purse in a place where it could be found? Because in the finding of the purse, all it did was put all military members at the base under closer scrutiny. And Joel was a soldier there. Why didn't Joel just throw the purse and phone away? Hard to understand. But I'm going to go back to what the police said. They believe the purse was planted, meaning they don't believe Jael was ever on that trail. And my interpretation of the concept of quote-unquote planting is that whoever does it is trying to take investigators in the exact opposite direction of where they should be going. Since Chugiak, where the purse was found, is 18 miles away from Anchorage, I'm inclined to believe the planter wanted to take detectives away from Anchorage. That is the only reason the purse wasn't destroyed. The person who put it there wanted it to be found and didn't want investigators looking around the Anchorage area. But Anchorage doesn't necessarily mean Kendra and her men. Don't get me wrong, they are all horrible people. Not because of their sexual tastes, but because of their manipulation of a young woman. I'll put it this way. If Kendra did something to Jael, why would she ever plant the purse in an area where her own future husband, a military member, would be thrown in with all of Jael's sex clients at the base because people from the base were known to frequent that trail? Why would Kendra put Nico and all those friends she made at the base under such close scrutiny? Once again, hard to understand. So I'm going to ask you to think about something else. How hard is it to accidentally damage a phone to the point of it not working? Pretty hard, considering that most people now have cases on their phones that protect them from drops. Really, most people, if they hurt their phone, just end up cracking the screen or breaking the case. Hardly ever to the point of total destruction where they can't use it. Yet Jael's was damaged to the point that no information could be gotten off of it. What I'm saying is the phone probably was damaged on purpose. But who would plant a purse with a purposefully damaged phone in it? You answer that question, and I think whoever that is will look pretty in orange. An orange jumpsuit. I'll leave the rest of the theorizing up to you. And that's the program. If you found it informative, please go to the app that you use to listen to Unfound and give this podcast a nice review. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Densel, and you've been listening to Unfound.